Have you ever felt the sting of being ignored? The hollow ache in your chest when someone you care about or someone you value simply doesn't acknowledge you. Let me tell you something: that feeling, as sharp and painful as it is, carries a message. It's a signal, an invitation for introspection, and above all, it's a sign. When someone ignores you, the immediate reaction is often visceral, like a sharp sting to the heart or a lump rising in your throat. That pain is undeniable, and for many of us, it feels like rejection. But here's the thing: pain, as uncomfortable as it may be, is a messenger. It is your mind and body trying to communicate with you, urging you to pay attention to something deeper within yourself. Think about it. Pain doesn't just show up randomly. It's not a nuisance meant to break you. It's a signal. It's as if your emotions are waving a red flag and saying, hey, something here needs your attention. But often, instead of pausing to listen to the message, we rush to silence it. We distract ourselves, suppress the feelings, or even blame ourselves for the hurt. And when we do that, we miss out on the wisdom that pain is offering us. Let's sit with this for a moment. When you feel the ache of being ignored, what's really happening? Is it that someone's silence has diminished your worth? Or is it that their actions have highlighted a place where your heart feels unseen or undervalued? The truth is, the pain isn't about them. It's about what their behavior triggers within you. Pain is a magnifying glass that brings into focus the areas of your life where you might need healing, boundaries, or clarity. For instance, if being ignored makes you feel unimportant, that pain might be pointing to a deeper wound, a story you've been carrying that says you're not enough. Maybe it's a narrative rooted in your past, in experiences where you felt overlooked or unseen. But here's the good news: recognizing this is the first step to rewriting that story. Instead of pushing the pain away, what if you leaned into it with curiosity? What if, instead of asking, why is this happening to me, you asked, what is this trying to teach me? Pain is not your enemy, it's your teacher. It teaches you where your boundaries might need to be stronger. It shows you where your self-worth might need to be fortified. And most importantly, it reminds you to pay attention to your own needs and feelings. When someone ignores you, it's easy to spiral into self-doubt or even self-blame. You might start thinking, did I do something wrong? Am I not good enough? But pause for a moment and remember this: their silence doesn't define you. It doesn't have the power to diminish your value unless you let it. What the pain is really asking you to do is to turn inward, to look at yourself not with judgment, but with compassion. Pain is also a mirror. It reflects back to you the areas where you might need to grow or heal. For example, if you notice that you're deeply hurt by being ignored, it might be a sign that you've placed too much of your self-worth in someone else's hands. That's not a flaw, it's simply a reminder to reclaim your power. So when the sting of being ignored strikes, don't run from it, sit with it, journal about it, talk to someone you trust. Ask yourself, what is this pain trying to tell me about myself? About my relationships? About my needs? You'll find that the answers often lie within you, waiting to guide you toward healing and growth. Pain, though uncomfortable, is one of life's greatest messengers. It's not there to punish you, it's there to awaken you. It's there to remind you that even in the moments when others fail to see you, you have the power to see yourself. And that is where true healing begins. One of the hardest truths to accept is that connection, the deep, meaningful relationships we all crave, is not something that happens passively. It requires intentionality, effort, and most of all, courage. When someone ignores you, the sting you feel is rooted in our shared human need for connection. We are wired for it. Connection is what gives life its depth and meaning, but achieving it, maintaining it, and nurturing it takes bravery. Why courage, you might ask? Because true connection demands vulnerability. It's not just about being present in someone else's life, it's about showing up authentically with your heart open and your walls lowered. And here's the catch: vulnerability is risky. When you extend yourself emotionally, when you share your feelings, or when you ask for attention, you expose yourself to the possibility of rejection or disappointment and being ignored. It feels like that risk has backfired, doesn't it? But let me tell you something. When someone ignores you, it doesn't mean you lack value. It means there is an opportunity for reflection. Ask yourself, was this a space where I could truly be seen and heard? Was this a connection where both courage and vulnerability were honored? The silence of being ignored often shines a spotlight on one of two things. Either the other person wasn't ready to meet you where you are, or the connection itself wasn't built on mutual understanding. Both are painful realizations, but they can also be transformative. They push us to reassess the connections in our lives and ask whether they are serving our growth, our joy, and our authenticity. Courage also plays a role in how we respond to being ignored. It takes strength to resist the temptation to shut down, to withdraw, or to pretend that the hurt doesn't exist. It takes courage to speak up and say, "This hurt me," or to ask, "Did I do something to upset you?" Confronting these moments with honesty and openness is not easy, but it is the foundation of authentic connection. And let's not forget, connection requires courage because it forces us to face ourselves. Sometimes the pain of being ignored triggers insecurities we've been avoiding. Maybe it reminds us of past rejection or feelings of unworthiness. It's tempting to blame the other person entirely for the discomfort, but true courage lies in looking inward. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Why does this hurt so much? What story am I telling myself about their behavior? For example, if someone's silence makes you feel unworthy, that might be a sign that you're seeking external validation instead of grounding your worth within yourself. And that realization, it's a gift. It's an invitation to strengthen your relationship with yourself so that your value isn't dependent on someone else's acknowledgement. Courage in connection also means learning to discern where your energy is best spent. Not every relationship will honor your vulnerability. Not every person will meet you with the same level of openness and effort. It takes bravery to recognize when a connection isn't serving you and to walk away not out of bitterness, but out of love for yourself. But here's the beautiful thing when you approach connection with courage. When you commit to showing up authentically and surrounding yourself with people who do the same, the relationships you build are transformative. These are the connections that nourish your soul, that make you feel seen and valued, and that withstand the challenges of life. So yes, connection requires courage. It requires the bravery to be vulnerable, to speak up, and to face your own insecurities. It requires the strength to let go of relationships that don't honor you and the resilience to keep seeking the ones that do. And when you embrace that courage, you'll find that the connections you create are richer, deeper, and more meaningful than you ever imagined. Remember, the sting of being ignored doesn't have to define your worth. It can become a stepping stone to finding the connections that truly matter. When someone ignores you, it can feel like a slap to your sense of value. You might begin to wonder, do I matter to them? Am I not enough? But instead of letting their actions determine your worth, consider this: their behavior might be shining a light on an essential life principle. Boundaries are not just about protecting your time or energy, they are a reflection of how deeply you value yourself. Boundaries are the lines we draw to define what we will and won't tolerate in our relationships. They are not walls to shut people out, but invitations for others to engage with us in ways that are healthy, respectful, and affirming. When someone ignores you, it's often an indication that a boundary, spoken or unspoken, has been crossed, and it's your opportunity to reassess and redefine where those lines need to be. Now, here's the hard truth: setting and enforcing boundaries takes tremendous self-worth. Why? Because boundaries require you to believe that you are worthy of being treated with respect, dignity, and care. If you don't truly value yourself, it becomes all too easy to let others overstep your boundaries, whether through neglect, dismissiveness, or outright disrespect. Think about it. How many times have you stayed silent when someone's behavior hurt you because you didn't want to rock the boat? How often have you allowed someone's actions or lack of action to linger in your life, all because you were afraid of losing them? That fear, that hesitation, stems from a place of undervaluing yourself. It's rooted in the belief that their presence in your life is more important than your peace of mind. But let me ask you this, what if you flip the script? What if you saw boundaries not as acts of confrontation, but as declarations of self-love? When you set a boundary, you are saying, I care about myself enough to ensure that the people in my life treat me with the respect I deserve. You're not asking for too much, you're simply acknowledging your worth and expecting others to honor it. When someone ignores you, it's an opportunity to examine the boundaries in that relationship. Ask yourself, am I clear about what I need and expect from this connection? Have I communicated my feelings openly and respectfully? Am I tolerating behavior that diminishes my self-worth? If the answer to any of these questions reveals a lack of clarity or firmness in your boundaries, then it's time to take action not to punish the other person, but to honor yourself. Start by being honest about what you need. If someone's silence hurts you, have the courage to express it. I feel hurt when you ignore me. And I value clear communication in my relationships. This kind of statement isn't about blaming, it's about advocating for your emotional well-being. However, boundaries are not just about what you ask of others, they're also about what you demand of yourself. Part of valuing your worth is refusing to chase after people who consistently disregard you. It's about saying to yourself, I am worthy of relationships where I am seen, heard, and valued. And if this connection doesn't provide that, I am strong enough to let it go. This is where the deeper work begins. Setting boundaries is only half the equation. Enforcing them is where your self-worth truly shines. It's one thing to say, I won't tolerate being ignored, but it's another to hold firm when someone tests that boundary. And here's the thing, people will test your boundaries, either consciously or unconsciously. They may push back, resist, or even dismiss your feelings. This is why boundaries require not just self-worth, but also self-discipline. Enforcing a boundary might mean having uncomfortable conversations or distancing yourself from people who refuse to respect you. It might mean enduring the temporary discomfort of loneliness in exchange for the long-term reward of peace and self-respect. But every time you stand firm in your boundaries, you reinforce the truth that you are worthy of respect, no matter what. And let's be clear, setting boundaries is not about controlling others, it's about empowering yourself. You cannot force someone to treat you the way you deserve, but you can control how you respond. You can decide who has access to your time, energy, and emotions. And when you make those decisions from a place of self-worth, you'll find that your relationships become richer, healthier, and more fulfilling. So the next time someone ignores you, let it be a moment of reflection. See it as a chance to reassess your boundaries and realign them with your sense of worth. Because here's the truth, the way you allow others to treat you is a direct reflection of how you see yourself. And when you value yourself deeply, your boundaries will naturally reflect that. When someone ignores you, it's easy to fall into the trap of shame. That sinking feeling in your chest, the voice in your head that whispers, what's wrong with me? Why am I not worth their attention? This is shame creeping in to take control. But here's the thing about shame, it thrives in silence, secrecy, and self-judgment. If you allow it to take the driver's seat, it can lead you down a path of self-blame and unworthiness, making a temporary moment of pain feel like a defining verdict on your value. Shame tells us that being ignored is a reflection of who we are, rather than a reflection of the circumstances or the other person's capacity. It creates a narrative that magnifies rejection into a personal failing, turning an external experience into an internal wound. But shame at its core is a lie. It's not a measure of your worth. It's an emotion triggered by a fear of disconnection. The first step in resisting shame's grip is recognizing it. Pay attention to how you speak to yourself in moments of hurt. Are your inner thoughts compassionate and understanding, or are they harsh and self-critical? When someone ignores you, it's not uncommon for the voice of shame to distort the situation. They must not care about me. Maybe I'm too much or not enough. I shouldn't have reached out. These thoughts are shame's way of pulling you inward, isolating you from your inherent value and your capacity for connection. Once you recognize shame, the next step is to name it. There's power in acknowledging what you're feeling instead of letting it fester unspoken. You might say to yourself, I'm feeling ashamed right now because being ignored makes me feel invisible and unworthy. By naming your shame, you separate it from your identity. You remind yourself that it's an emotion, not a fact. The most powerful antidote to shame, however, is self-compassion. When you're hurting, it's tempting to turn against yourself, to dissect everything you might have done wrong or should have done differently. But what if instead you treated yourself with the same kindness you would offer a close friend? If someone you loved came to you feeling ignored and ashamed, would you criticize them or would you remind them of their worth? Shame cannot survive in the presence of self-compassion. When you extend grace to yourself, you dismantle shame's power to define you. You begin to see that being ignored doesn't mean you're unworthy, it means you're human, navigating relationships that are sometimes messy and imperfect. It's also important to remember that shame often feeds on assumptions. When someone ignores you, the lack of communication can create a void that your mind rushes to fill with worst-case scenarios. You might assume their silence is intentional, that it's a statement about how they feel about you, or that it's proof of your inadequacy. But the truth is, you don't know what's going on in their world. They might be dealing with their own struggles, insecurities, or limitations that have nothing to do with you. Recognizing this uncertainty doesn't erase the pain of being ignored, but it can help you untangle your emotions from shame's grip. Shame also thrives when we allow it to isolate us. When you feel ashamed, you might pull away from others, afraid to be seen in your vulnerability. But this withdrawal only deepens shame's hold. Instead, reach out to someone you trust, a friend, a mentor, a loved one. Share how you're feeling, not as a way of seeking validation, but as a way of breaking shame's silence. When you allow others to see you in your vulnerable moments, you remind yourself that you're not alone in your struggles, and you create space for connection to heal the hurt. Shame might try to convince you that being ignored is a reflection of your worth, but it's not. It's a temporary experience, not a permanent identity. And when you refuse to let shame take the driver's seat, you reclaim your power to navigate your emotions with self-awareness, compassion, and resilience. When someone ignores you, the initial reaction is often to dwell on the pain of the experience. You feel the sting of rejection, the ache of being overlooked, and the sharp discomfort of wondering why someone chose silence instead of acknowledgement. The wound is real, and it's valid to feel it. But here's the transformative truth: while wounds may demand attention, it's the lessons embedded within the experience that hold the power to guide and shape you. Every interaction, even the painful ones, carries an opportunity for growth. The act of being ignored forces you to confront deeper truths about your expectations, your vulnerabilities, and your approach to relationships. These moments become a mirror, reflecting not just the actions of others, but your own responses and patterns. The question is, where will you place your focus? Will you linger in the hurt, replaying the moment and feeding the wound? Or will you look beyond the pain to uncover what it's teaching you about yourself and the connections you build? Leaning into the lessons requires a conscious shift in perspective. Instead of asking, why did they ignore me? Ask, what is this situation revealing to me? Perhaps it's showing you the importance of clear communication or reminding you to align your expectations with reality. Maybe it's pointing to areas where you've been giving too much of yourself without reciprocity, or where you've neglected your own boundaries in pursuit of approval. The lesson may be uncomfortable to face, but it is a gift, a tool for greater self-awareness and emotional intelligence. Leaning into the lessons also requires you to embrace accountability. This doesn't mean blaming yourself for someone else's actions, but it does mean examining your role in the dynamic with honesty and compassion. Ask yourself, did I clearly express my needs or did I assume they would understand? Have I been overly reliant on their validation to feel secure in myself? Am I holding onto a relationship or connection that no longer serves my growth? This kind of introspection isn't about assigning blame, it's about taking ownership of your growth. It's recognizing that while you can't control how others treat you, you have full control over how you respond, what you learn, and how you move forward. At the same time, leaning into the lessons means refusing to let the wound define you. It's natural to feel hurt, but the danger lies in allowing that hurt to dictate your self-perception. When someone ignores you, the temptation is to internalize the rejection, to let it feed doubts about your worth or lovability. But the lesson is not about your value, it's about your capacity to grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient in the face of adversity. This is also a moment to challenge the stories you tell yourself about the situation. It's easy to create a narrative that frames the other person as cruel or indifferent and yourself as a victim. But these stories, while comforting in the moment, often obscure the deeper truths and lessons at play. Instead, lean into curiosity. Ask yourself what their actions might reveal about their own struggles or limitations. This doesn't excuse hurtful behavior, but it does widen your perspective, allowing you to approach the situation with empathy rather than resentment. Leaning into the lessons also requires patience. Growth doesn't happen instantly, and the insights you gain from these experiences often come in layers, unfolding over time. You may not immediately understand why a certain interaction played out the way it did or what it's teaching you, but trust that every experience, even the painful ones, is part of a larger tapestry of learning and becoming. And finally, leaning into the lessons is about recognizing your own resilience. Each time you choose to seek meaning instead of dwelling on the hurt, you strengthen your capacity to navigate the complexities of relationships with grace and wisdom. You remind yourself that while you may not always control the actions of others, you have the power to shape your response, to grow through the experience, and to emerge stronger on the other side. In life, moments of being ignored can feel deeply painful, yet they hold the potential to teach profound lessons. Pain is a messenger urging us to listen to our emotions and honor what they reveal. True connection demands courage, while boundaries reflect the value we place on ourselves. Shame may attempt to cloud our worth, but self-compassion and resilience can overcome it. By leaning into the lessons, we transform rejection into an opportunity for growth. Remember, your worth is not defined by someone else's actions. Every challenge strengthens your capacity to love, heal, and connect more authentically with others.